All right, all right. Welcome to the Real Estate Blog Podcast, where we ask our guests the hard questions by taking a deep dive into how they have built their teams, marketing strategies, and systems and process on how they built a machine that spits out consistent deals month after month. Where the value given during the show will help you find and create consistent real estate deals. Today, I have my main man, Paul Sparks. What's up, man?
Hey, what's going on here?
Hey, man, tell us a little bit of who you were prior to real estate. Why the heck did you get into real estate? And yeah, kind of hit the ground running.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure. I've seen some of the guests you've had on here so far, so happy to be here and share. Um, I am an engineer by trade. I've heard
Oh,
it said
wow.
many times. I'm a recovering engineer, and I got an industrial engineering degree, and I graduated from Clemson University back in 2013. And when I went through school, I thought for sure I wanted to be an engineer. We were fortunate enough to do this thing called a co-op, where you kind of work for a company and flip flop back from school to work. So I had come out of school with a year of experience and just realized like I did not want to do that for the rest of my life. And so I was a little just confused what to do at that point. So I packed my car up and moved from South Carolina to Denver, Colorado, which is where I'm at now.
Oh,
And
nice. Love the area.
yeah, it's fantastic here. And, and I had no idea what I wanted to do. I actually got a job cutting down trees. I was lumberjacking. I was building, just doing some odds and ends because I really had no clue what I wanted to do with my life at that point. Found my way into a sales role. So I started selling to engineers, which was a much better fit for my skill set. And so for about 8 years, I spent traveling to at least one city a week. Most of the time, it was two cities a week to sell,
Wow.
automation equipment
Mhm.
to manufacturers. I ended up working with companies like United Airlines and Amazon, Walmart, these types of companies. So had sort of built my way up in this corporate sales world and started selling some really large capital projects to some of the largest companies in the world. And so that's how I sort of got my start. But what happened was we were getting ready to close one of the largest deals in my career in uh, February of 2020, and United Airlines was getting ready to cut us this massive check for this, project we had sold to them. And then I got a phone call, and it was like, "Hey, we got a little bit of a problem here. There's this whole like virus thing, and we're not sure what's going on, and we need to just sort of sit tight on this project." And it's like, what do you mean? We spent 2 years building this business case, and
Mhm.
I need my check. That's how I get paid. And of course, that check never came. COVID sort of crushed a lot of our projects, and
Man.
man, I was just left with this real sinking feeling. I'm not sure what I'm going to do.
Mhm.
Fortunately, for a few years prior to that, I'd been buying houses. Didn't really know what I was doing. I just knew I
Really?
wanted
Okay.
to live, and I would buy a house. I'd move into it, and then a year later, I would buy another one. And I kept doing that a few times, and I didn't, like I said, didn't really know what I was doing until COVID hit, and now all of a sudden, like you really need to start figuring out what you're going to do because those projects are gone. So that was my first entry into this world of maybe I can make a career out of real estate investing.
Well, that's incredible, man. And I'm glad. I feel like a lot of people that become successful have that little bit of a sales background. But I mean, already being an engineer, sales. I mean, you were the perfect candidate to get into this space. Let me ask you this: you said you were buying rentals while you were working as an engineer, salesperson. What was your first deal, and how did you even buy your first rental?
I didn't know I was buying a rental at the time. I was just started dating my wife now, but at the time, I was living in a house with three other guys, and she was like, "I'm not coming over to your house anymore. Like this is just ridiculous." So it was more just like, all right, I got to buy a house. That was my first entry into that world. I bought a house, and then
Mm.
just luckily, I met a neighbor who happened to be a mortgage lender. And he was explaining to me, you can buy another house if you wanted, turn that house you bought there into a rental, and you can do that over and over and over again. And I was like, wait, what? And so my first rental property was a primary residence that I, started collecting. So I bought one, moved one street over. About a year and a half later, we bought another one, a couple blocks over again. And so I didn't realize what I was doing at the time. I was busy, building my sales career. But I'm really glad that happened, because when I got caught with all of our projects, kind of failing, I was really happy that I had some rentals accrued to support some of my my lifestyle, which was really lucky and fortunate for me.
How many rentals did you have before making real estate like a full-on career?
Well, we had 2 rentals at that time, and it was in 2020 where I was like, all right, well, I'm at this like crossroads. What am I going to do here? So I started. I actually, that year I bought an Airbnb, used a second home loan, and I'd still have my W-2 at the time. So was making pretty good money at that point. So I had a really high borrowing capacity. So I bought a short-term rental, and the lender was like, you have maybe $10 left in your DTI. So we were not going to let you get any more. So I acquired that rental. At that point, I had probably built up about maybe $6,000 to $7,000 a month in cash flow, which was enough for me to leave my job. Here in Colorado,
Right.
much higher priced homes, and so I had I guess that was my 3rd rental property at that time, and so that was enough to sort of cover my base expenses. And from there, I started. I sort of describe my journey in real estate as like playing giant Jenga. You just sort of start pressing on these blocks and see which one gives a little bit. And that's sort of what I did in 2020.
Well, you brought up a good point and something I would like to actually touch on. I've never touched on this before in this show, but you said you were able to buy all these houses because you had the W-2. When I had my W-2, I started wholesaling real estate, and I was moving around a lot. I was going to different fire departments. We could talk about my story some other time, but when I got out of the fire department thinking, oh, I'm making all this money now, I'm going to go buy my house and all that. Well, what do you need to buy a house? You need tax returns. Well, I didn't work on my W-2 firefighter department job anymore. So I had to wait. Thank God I was already in a place with my wife, my girlfriend at the time, now wife. And we had to wait 2 years to get tax returns. And it's the moment, it was literally the beginning of 2022. We filed and got into a house as soon as possible.
Yeah. And I didn't find that out until as I was considering leaving my job. So it was like, all right, well, let's take out as much debt as we possibly can before I leave my job, because it's going to be another 2 years before we're going to get bank financing at a very minimum. So yeah, that's exactly what we did.
Yeah, so that's what I would definitely tell everybody before you quit your job, and if you want to, knowing that if you're going to buy rentals and stuff like that, you need to be bankable, right? Exactly. I know that's something Leon talks a lot about. So, Paul, let me ask you this. Okay, so you were, 2020 happened. You had a couple rentals. What was your breakthrough? What was your business model going forward? Did you keep buying rental properties? Did you start flipping? I mean, are you doing this in Denver? What does your business model look like now?
Well, when I got started, it was really what happened was I bought a house from I brought a brand new townhome.
Okay.
Now that's not exactly the house hacking or the ideal scenario that they talk about in a lot of these books, right? But basically, I was like, I don't want to have to deal with capital expense, so I bought a brand new townhouse. In fact, the guy who built that home ended up, he and I ended up, I guess, becoming fairly close. And he was a builder who built a lot of these types of things. And I was like, man, how do I get into business with somebody like that? Like, what does someone like that need in order to, to bring value to them? And what I realized is, well, they need capital and they need deal flow. And I was like, well, I mean, I'm a sales guy. I think I could figure out how to go in there and get some deals and get some capital. And so that's what we did. And so I didn't really know a whole lot about wholesaling at the time. It was just, how do I find off-market sellers willing to sell us their house so that I can go out and raise capital and bring it to him, and then we can execute that deal. And so it turned into kind of a volume-based wholesaling gig, So at the time, it was just me. I was like trying to understand, okay, well, is it cold calling? Is it text? Is it direct mail? Is it SEO? We tried a bunch of different things. And so for 2021, which was my first full year in the business, here in Denver, I want to say we did 20 deals. So nothing crazy, but it was a lot of just trying stuff, right?
Yeah.
We did a handful of flips. We did a handful of wholesaling. Started doing I got into a couple larger, what we're called pop tops here in Denver. So they're kind of like small developments. And that was what it was. It was just putting one deal together after the next. There wasn't a ton of consistency. There wasn't a ton of predictability in the business. It was just like, throw a bunch of spaghetti at the wall. Let's see what sticks, and let's try to go from there.
Okay. So you partnered with this guy. When you said that you were trying all these different things, was it you trying all the different things and he was kind of sitting on the sideline? Were you guys both trying different things? Or was it just you two? What does your team look like then? And we'll talk about what your team looks like now.
Yeah, so he was not part of the business at all. He was someone that I saw as an experienced builder, and I said to myself, well, what would he need in order to get into business with him, right? And so it was consistent deal flow, and it was raising capital. And so, yeah, 2021 was all about seeing how we can build this consistency in the deal flow. So we had an acquisitions person. I had kind of like I wouldn't call her a COO. It was more of an operations. It's funny because you go from being a corporate salesperson and buying rentals and realize that's very different than running a real estate business.
Right.
So it was just a lot of kicks in the shin, punches in the nose the entire year. How do we build reliability and predictability there? How do I become the leader that I needed to be in order to run an operation like that? So it was just a lot of growing pains in that first year. And I look back on that year very fondly because it's given me all the scars that I now compare with other real estate investors today. Right. And we all go through that process in business.
Oh yeah.
And so, yeah, that's what 2021 looked like.
All right, so that's 2021. Now, what does 2022 look like and your team look like now? And how did you break through? And this is something I love talking about in this show. And the whole purpose of the show is, how did you go from doing a couple deals here and there? We know how that struggle is. You get a deal 1 month, then the next month's kind of dry, and then you get a deal, right? To getting consistent real estate deals month after month. How did you break through that?
Yeah, and I always called that lumpy, very lumpy.
Okay. Yep.
And it's like you look at your revenue, and it's like a month of drought, and then 3 months. I mean, it was just and it brings a lot of anxiety, right, as a business owner. And so, actually, I'm going to go a little bit different direction than I think that some of your previous guests have gone. What I learned how to do is build, and actually, I won the CG belt last January presenting on this. And what I presented on was how I built what I call a business treasury that pays all of my operating expenses and employee salaries. And so I met a mentor, a guy that worked with Microsoft in the early 2000s, and he's helped a lot of Fortune 500 companies. And now he works with small businesses to build what he calls a business treasury. So the idea is this. Most of us business owners, we have cash sitting in the bank, right? We have 6 months of expenses, 12 months, whatever it is. And it's like a weird revolving door where, you look at it sometimes, and sometimes it's a lot, sometimes there's not much there. Well, what he showed me how to do is when you look at a company like Microsoft, for example, they have their operating business and they do all the things that they do to operate the business, but they also behave like a bank when you really look at it, right? Microsoft has $200 billion of investable assets. They're not taking that $200 billion and sticking it in Chase Bank, right? They're using that money to create income off of that can then go to support their operating business. And so this gentleman, his name's Dan Nicholson, fantastic. He's a partner of mine now. And he introduced me to this concept of like, if you can figure out how to take your retained earnings and the cash that's in the bank and use that to create enough passive income that it can offset the operating expenses in your business, now you're operating from net zero, and every deal you do is profit, right? Not trying to catch up to this, monthly nut, so to speak. So this was like a revolutionary concept in my business. And I was like, wow, that's really interesting. So essentially what he taught me how to do was build this business treasury so that I was kicking enough cash flow off of it so that my business ran with a very, very, I didn't quite get it fully covered, but I was running very, very low operating cost business, which meant I now no longer have to do deals to stay in business.
Wow.
Which was crazy to me.
Okay, so it sounds like so you won the belt, which is fantastic. Congratulations on that. Wasn't in the group at that time, but I wrote down some notes here. Business treasury, passive income. Tell us more about that, and how can myself get passive income from my cash in the bank?
Well, so there's a lot to unpack with that, and I don't want to dive too deep into it, right? But there's a difference between liquidity and solvency, right? So your liquidity is being able to pay for your short-term expenses, right? So anything less than a year, anything more than a year would be want to remain solvent. And so essentially what I was doing is I took my retained earnings and I was using things like loans and I know this is a real estate show. We were excuse me. We learned how to do a bunch of cool stuff in the blockchain space where we were able to kick off a ton of cash flow from that, right? So there's different ways, and I don't want to get too technical, but basically ways that you can take your retained earnings and use it to create that passive income. In the same way that we own rentals and the same way we do this type of stuff, you can do that with retained earnings through lending, through infinite banking policies, through blockchain. There's all sorts of ways to create this. That's the fun problem that I look forward to solving every single day, which is like, how do I don't want to compete on a volume-based business. Yes, we still do, 3 deals or so per year. We're in a very competitive market here in Denver. My skill set is not towards a high volume business. I want to run a business that suits my lifestyle a lot more. And in order to do that, I have to have reliability in some way or another, right? And so the way I do that is through this business treasury concept.
That's fantastic. I know I know you've been doing a podcast with Steve Trang about the blockchain and probably some of these things that you're talking about. So if you want to go learn more about that, definitely go check out Steve Trang. What's your guys' podcast called?
It's called Certainty Talks.
Certainty Talks. Love it. But you just kind of pointed out there, you said you're doing about 3 deals. So are you doing any real estate deals right now?
Yeah, we are. So primarily, one of the things I learned from this guy, Dan, who's my mentor, who's a partner with Steve and I in this blockchain project that we're doing, he taught me about this framework he calls the barbell strategy, right? So I know you do a lot of working out, weightlifting, right? So I
just posted that today.
Yeah, I saw that. So everybody here is familiar with a barbell. We've all seen a barbell. If you haven't, then you probably should get into the gym and go take a look at one. Right? But when you look at a barbell, you don't load weight in the middle of a bar, right? You either load it on you load it on the end, so it's either on this end or it's on this end. And the whole concept is like, how do you remove risk from a system, right? And so you do that by not putting weight in the middle of the bar. And so what that looks like for me is from a very high level. I have my real estate business and my rentals and the things that I do on the real estate side on what I call the reliable side of the barbell. There's not like, I'm not taking much risk. It's just constantly locking in my financial certainty. On the other side of the barbell, I like to take bets where if the upside is really big, but the downside's really low. So if I make a bet and I'm right, we make a ton of money. But if I'm wrong, we don't lose very much money, right?
Right.
I like to take those bets, and that's how I think about my barbell. And so real estate sits on one side, and then blockchain, AI, technology. Again, I sold tech for 10 years, so that's just me, right? That's my style. But when I look at my real estate business, as you zoom in on that side of the barbell, you see barbells inside of barbells.
Mm-hmm.
But what I mean by that is on the real estate side, I've got reliability through things like my rentals. We do wholesaling, we do retail, we do novations, and we do creative strategies. Those are all strategies where I don't take title to the house. My risk is very low. I don't have to put a lot of money into a wholesale deal, a retail deal, a novation deal, or a creative finance deal, right? So my risk is very, very low. On the other side of the barbell, I do things like small developments. I do land entitlement deals where, and I'm not taking title to the property in a land entitlement deal, but I can add significant value to a property like that and make $250,000, $500,000 in one rip.
Wow.
Right? So for me, the definition of loading the weight in the middle of the bar, what that looks like for me, it's going to be different for everybody, are things like fix and flips, right? I am just terrible at fix and flips. We've had some that have gone really well. We've had some that have gone really terrible. And so those are the bets that I want to take off the table. I either want it to have high reliability and consistency, or if I'm going to take down a project, I want there to be a lot of upside on it. Right. So I look at my business and my real estate business like that. We do, like I said, we did, I think 33 deals last year. That was a mix of retail, wholesale, novation. The majority of our deals were there. On the other side is where I do maybe 2, maybe 3 larger deals per year. But if I'm going to take down a deal, I want there to be a lot of, juice on it, essentially.
For sure. No, I like that, the barbell strategy. And it's something that me and my wife talk about a lot. So she's my partner. And I love that you bring the low risk. And that's something we talk about all the time. So we went head first into wholesaling, novations, retail, doing more of that transactional based stuff. And I've had several people come up to me and say, "Hey, why not flip?" Because now I'm going to tell them, because my barbell strategy, less risk, my man.
Well, it's just some people might actually, that may not be loading the weight in the middle of the bar. Like there's plenty of, you've probably interviewed a lot of people that are dialed with their fix and flip operation. It's extremely reliable for them. So the question really isn't like, is this a reliable strategy or is it not? You have to sort of, realize that you got to play your game. You got to play to your strengths. There's one thing I've learned about myself in business is that I am not a very good operator. I need very simple businesses, like really simple. I probably could go out and find a COO to do all these things, but a volume-based business has never been my strategy. I've always been the guy to take that one massive deal down. And so I play to my strengths. I got to get rid of fix and flips because I can't do them very well. Sometimes they go well and sometimes they just go terribly.
Right. No, 100%. I mean, you definitely hit it on the head there. If you had the business model, your SOPs, and your business model was fix and flip. For example, I saw a post. We see a lot of Facebook, different types of posts, and this guy, he decided to post on his Facebook, "Hey, I got this deal. Should I wholesale this deal for 35 grand, or should I, do a flip and potentially make 120 grand?" I commented wholesale. I say that, and just because it already doesn't sound like he has a very good fix and flip model, if he got to ask Facebook that option, right? So go take your step, take your, the safe route, make your 35 grand rip, go find somebody else how to fix a flip, and then really learn how to do it, or do it with that deal.
Yeah, and it's just like, it's all about removing risk from the system.
I love that.
We have a phrase that we call the solvable problem, right? And oftentimes, so the solvable problem is sort of like, the analogy I give is, think of Google Maps. Very few of us, if we're getting in the car to go somewhere that we've never been before, we don't just get in Google Maps and be like, "Yeah, I'd like to go north." It's like, what does that mean? North can be northwest, northeast. It could be 60 miles. It could be 600 miles. That's just an arbitrary thing. But us as business owners and entrepreneurs, we just get in. It's like saying, I just want to make more money, right? But
Yeah.
the whole idea of the solvable problem is like with Google Maps, it's going to tell you, well, it's going to take you about this long to get there, taking into account the speed limits and the stop signs and all the things, right? Because if you're trying to accomplish some goal, you need to define the end point. And oftentimes, if you don't have that clarity around what are you trying to solve with your business and your investments, you're just going to err on the side of more. What, what makes more money? And it's like, well, but you're not considering the fact that in order to make that money, you might have to go 40 miles an hour over the speed limit to get there in that time. And the risk is you get pulled over and thrown in jail or something, right? But we make these bets constantly in our real estate business. I know this because I was guilty of it for 2 years, erring on the side of, but I could make more money if I do this.
Yep. No, 100%. I love that. Paul, let me ask you this. What does your team look like now?
So we have a pretty small team. My wife, fortunately, she was able to leave her job and go full time in real estate with me. So she
That's
handles
awesome.
a lot of the. Yeah, it is awesome. Comes with its challenges, but that's those are fun challenges. We love working together. It's just takes a little bit of time to get up to speed with that. She does all of our retail transactions. I have an acquisition manager who is, boots on the ground, day-to-day meeting with sellers and our agent relationships and things like this. I've got a project manager who, in fact, because we shifted towards less deals, what we've done is we have him starting to do jobs for other house hackers, new investors, homeowners, right? So he can kind of fill the gap with, again, less risk, right? We don't own the house. We can just come in and we can do these deals and take, anywhere from a couple $1,000s down up to $10,000 per these different deals. I've got an executive assistant who acts as kind of like a COO for me and the business, does a lot of the system stuff that I don't like to do and I'm not great at. She's fantastic. And then I've got a videographer who we hired last year that helps me with all of the content and all the podcasts,
Oh, nice.
all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Oh, so you got that video. You got that video guy making your set look way better than my blue O set. Hey,
Yeah.
brother, you said two things. One, I love that your wife works with you. That's close to my heart. I love working with my wife, and yeah, you're absolutely right. There's challenges. We try to hold level 10 meetings once a week. Looking at expenses, where are we going? A lot of times where we could hash out everything we need to hash out in our level 10s, because a lot of times you guys already know the passing. Hey, can you do this? So we try to have that level of communication. And also another cool thing about having it in your business, I know you and your wife probably do it all the time, right before you go to bed, or you're out on the road or driving. You guys are just talking probably business a lot. I don't know if that's how you guys do it, but I know that's just something we do all the time.
Yeah. I was just on a call earlier today where we were talking about this, and part of what's gotten me in trouble in business in the past is not defining the non-negotiables or the rules ahead of time.
Yep.
Right? You just start doing things, and then all of a sudden you're trying to make up the rules as you go, right? And so we put a stop to that, which means like we don't talk about business after 6 p.m. because we want to maintain a certain level of
sanity.
Just I don't know the right word.
I'm
Sanity.
just kidding. I wouldn't know what to say. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like, I still want to be in love with my wife. I don't want to be talking about business all the time. And if we found that it dominated our conversation all the way up to bed, right? And it's like we get up and I'm an early riser. I'm up and out of bed. And then the first thing we see each other, she doesn't get up out of bed very early. She likes to sleep in. Good for her. But by the time she gets up, I'm already rolling. Like we're already in the middle of the heat. And so we just have to like set these boundaries, and we have to define those rules ahead of time, because it's really easy to just start, creeping up and what you allow or don't allow. And so, yeah, that's worked for us.
That's awesome. Paul, let me ask you this. It's just me kind of, this is from my own personal real question is, You said executive assistant. I can't tell you how many times I probably said it to my wife in the last couple of weeks. I was like, I need an executive assistant. Because she claims she's my executive assistant. She goes, I'm your executive assistant. I'm like, sweetheart, you're pregnant. You're about to have a baby. Anyways, what does your executive assistant look like? What does her pay look like? And what do you have her doing?
Great questions. You know, I hired her in the middle of last year because I started recognizing what my strengths were and what my strengths weren't. Um, I was letting a lot of stuff just fall through the cracks. I have a bias towards doing the things that I want to do versus the things that have to get done. I'll
Hmm.
just like push that to the side, like, we'll worry about that later. Let me just go sell something, right? And we'll make up for all the problems that we've created in our business. That's the salesperson's mentality. Is like, I'll just sell my way out of this hole or out of these problems that I had. And I think I just realized like that's not going to work. If you're going to try to build the business that you're trying to build, you need somebody to come in that can complement, your skill set. So, I don't. She is more than a traditional executive assistant for me. What she does is she handles a lot of coordinating schedules with the team. Now
Right.
she's running a lot of our meetings, like accountability meetings. If there's one area of improvement that I'm trying to get better at, it's managing people.
Hmm.
I never had to do that. I was always an individual contributor. I was on the road my entire career trying to build business cases and sell large deals to some of the largest companies in the world. I never had to worry about managing people.
Right.
So I think I just realized I'm going to start playing to my strengths and not try to focus on how do I get better at all the things that I'm bad at. How do we just find the who, not how? So she came in and she started doing a lot of that stuff. She manages, I mean, honestly, she just,
Incredible.
I don't even know what she does all day because it's like the business just runs. And I can throw stuff at her. She keeps it all organized and lets me stay focused on what I'm really good at. And that's why I pay her very well and hope to keep her around for a very long time.
That's incredible. I totally forgot about, who, not how, right? And I love, like you said, it was not just, and I was thinking, it's not just helping you out personally, but yeah, it is helping out the entire team, the business, and running that. So that's pretty impressive. Does she like do like personal stuff, like get your car washed, book your haircuts, any of
No, man, she doesn't do any of that because like it's not like she wouldn't do it. It's just that she is the COO type. So I've just continued to give her more and more and more responsibilities. That stuff is stuff that just like oftentimes just doesn't get done. I probably need an assistant to my assistant to help me with stuff like
right?
but this is all part of growing as a business owner as you start figuring out what works for you and where the gaps are. And hopefully you don't take too many, shin kicks along the way and you start figuring these things out. And, that's kind of where I'm at in the evolution as a business owner.
No, I love that. And yeah, that's our word for this year is culture. And I'm always trying to learn how to. I would say that's my number one struggle. So I'm going on a mastermind actually tomorrow, and one of those things on our presentation is like, "Hey, what are you struggling with?" And I would say the thing that I'm struggling with right now is possibly building, particularly my sales team. That's actually why I've been kind of intrigued on maybe getting Ren as a coach. But no, it's. But I like how I mean, it's the same situation. Run it, being that leader. Right. Another thing too is I picked up the book, what is it, 21 Laws of Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. So definitely reading that. Let me ask you this, Paul. Right now, what are your marketing strategies for your real estate business?
I'm glad you asked this question because I was hoping you were going to get to it. We completely changed our how I approached business. Again, this is a preference thing, not a right or wrong. There's countless people at CG who will be like, that's not the right way to run this business. And I'm like, yeah, but you don't know my strengths. You don't know my weaknesses. I'm not
Amen.
a great operator. And what I mean by that is I need very simple businesses.
Hmm. I
And
like that.
so what happened was I and it's not a fault of CG, it's a fault of my own biases. I got caught in a comparison trap, looking at all these
Hmm.
guys that have all these high volume businesses. They've got this incredible CRM, they're doing cold calling, texting, direct mail, SEO, all this stuff, right? and they got to manage the phone systems, and they got 3 or 4 salespeople, and they got lead management, and they've got dispo, and just all these departments. And it's not exactly complex for a lot of people, but it is for me. And what I found was like, I'm just constantly like putting fires out all over the place, trying to get my business to, we'd spend $15,000 a month in direct mail. And I mean, Aaron, I'm almost embarrassed to say this out loud. There were 2 months in a row where we had the wrong phone number on the freaking direct mail and burned $30,000. Just like would have been better lighting it on fire, man. And it's like my heart sinks a little bit when I even say that out loud. I just had to say to myself, Paul, you've got to start designing the business around you and your strengths. And so when I started, when I had built this business treasury, the weight sort of like, okay, we're not under the gun to like cover a $40,000 nut every month. Right.
Yeah.
And so the weight came off a little bit. I met Steve Trang, and he and we ended up starting a business together. We can talk about that later if you'd like, but he kind of kicked me in the butt a little bit and was like, you need to start talking about what you're doing. You need to, like put yourself out there a little bit. I had never posted anything ever on social media ever until June of last year. And he was like, get out here to Phoenix. We're going to do a podcast, and you and I are going to start doing a podcast together. And I was like, I don't really want to do that. And he's like, well, too damn bad. You're going to do it. And so he gave me the kick that I needed. What I found was I found my element. Like I love talking on podcasts. I love doing, interacting with my relationships. And so what I realized was like, I've built my entire career on relationships, but I got away from that because I got caught in this comparison trap. Right. So we in the middle of last year, we started scaling down our cold calling and our texting and our direct mail. We do 0 of that. We do 0 paid ads now. All of our deals are through relationships. So it's social media, it's building agent relationships, working with other wholesalers. Now, of course, our volume I fully expect our volume to probably actually stay about the same as it was. But I'm not interested in necessarily growing a massive wholesaling or, real estate business. What I'm looking for is reliability and consistency and doing things that give me a lot of energy. There's one thing that sucks the life out of me. It's figuring out how to fix a direct mail campaign or how to like get my cold callers to say the right scripts and stuff like this. It's like, so I had to design a business that fit my skill set, which is all around relationship building. And that's what my business looks like today.
That's incredible, man. And I'm so glad that you actually shared that with us today. I can't tell you how many, I'm going to say it right now. I would believe that anybody, if not everybody, in CG, any type of mastermind event, whatever you go to, they're all in that room comparing themselves, right? Yeah. It really does take the man to say, you know what, to really get yourself out there to spark up that conversation. And that's one thing I love that you said relationships. It's the whole reason why I wanted to start this podcast too, is really focus on more relationships. Me and your relationship right now, where I'm able to get to know you a little bit more, put your stuff out there and really add value to you where I can, you know what I mean? But I also like that you shared some of those mistakes. A lot of us have gone through some crazy mistakes, some punches in the gut, and that's the whole point of this business and why, because now that you were in this trap of comparison, let's just be honest. Now you're the kind of the authority figure at our mastermind, right? So now when we go to a mastermind, it's, hey, have you met Paul yet? Right. This guy's on the podcast. He's doing the treasury thing. He's talking about the blockchain. He has all these cool things. Now, hey, go talk to Paul. You know what I mean? So now everybody.
Case, but all right.
What's that?
I didn't know that was the case, but if you say so.
That's what I'm saying, man. And so you are now going to be the authority figure where you're able to be one of the leaders in our mastermind. And I'm just going to tell you that right now. And it's fantastic. I love seeing that. I love that I get to know you personally. And like I said, I can't wait to see where you're going to be going. So, but again, thanks for sharing that. My next thing, though, now in the current day and age, what is your number one struggle in your space? I know you said that you're kind of dialing back everything. What's your number one struggle?
Yeah. So, um, my biggest struggle is, so we talk about my mentor calls this the GI Joe bias, which basically says that so one of my biggest biases is towards comparison, is towards just chasing more and more and more and more.
Right.
Why? Because you said I couldn't, because I want to prove this person wrong, because I've always, thought of achievement as just like the next thing to accomplish. And so it took me 32 years to realize that, and to shine that uncomfortable light and be like, you do this all the time, right? And so now I'm fully aware of it. I try to break free of this comparison trap, and this is why I talk about solvable problems so much, because it's like, what are you actually trying to solve in your life? Forget about what everybody else is doing. You've got to stay focused on what you're trying to accomplish. But the GI Joe bias essentially says, even though you are aware of your bias, you're still subject to it, right? So what that means for me is, even though I'm now trying to design my business through this barbell strategy, trying to build it around relationships so that my overhead is significantly lower, which means we don't have to do as many deals, I am still constantly challenged by the fact that I see all these guys doing all these, super cool things in real estate or in, tech or whatever. And I'm caught in this like, ooh, I want to do that too. Right. So my biggest challenge right now is like reconciling with that bias. Cause now I've become aware of it. Now it's like, how do I make sure I don't violate that on a daily basis? Because my biology wants to do it. It's just, that's my biggest struggle, is just not chasing more. For the sake of it.
No, I love it. What is so I know we kind of just went through, I've been hearing, I'm going to talk a little bit about the recession. I've been hearing, and whatever you want to call it, a lot of people have said the worst is past, and then I've heard others say the worst is to come. Now, for some reason, I feel like that people who say the worst is to come is to sell some stuff. But anyways, what are your strategies to get through this market correction and coming out even stronger on the other side?
Well, having a bloated business is going to be really challenging in this upcoming market, right? So I feel fortunate that I figured this out in about June of last year, and we just leaned our business up real tight, right? So I mean, my monthly overhead is about 13, 14 grand,
Not bad.
So we can do one deal a quarter and still break even on that, right? So I had to modify my business so that we just aren't spending as much on overhead. But how I think about navigating challenging markets like this is through, I'm sure you've heard this phrase before, relationship capital. I am building the infrastructure of my relationship capital right now. Just like you're making a big push to do as many podcasts as you possibly can. I'm focusing on, we use an acronym that we call TIMER. And actually I added an A on the beginning. So it stands for attention, time, influence, money, energy, and relationships. So we use this to kind of think through what are all the different currencies that we can get, right? So right now may not be the best time to try to grab at cash, right? It might be a better time to start building up your relationship capital, to conserve your energy, to conserve your other resources, to grow your attention, right? So that you can monetize that later. So I think that everybody looks at business as if, and I know I say everybody because this was something I struggled with, right? You're looking at it in terms of just dollars and cents, but if you can zoom out and recognize there's other currencies that you can gain, right now is the best time that we've had in a decade to grow that relationship capital, to grab attention. And so that's what I'm focused on right now.
I love that. Relationship capital. Paul, let me ask you this. What have you listened to or read that's just inspired you recently that you would love to share to anybody?
So I got this book here called Rigging the Game. And this gentleman, Dan Nicholson, who wrote this book, he's the guy who taught me how to do the business treasury stuff. He is, I mean, he's just an impressive human. He's sort of rewired my brain towards all the things that I'm saying here, giving me the permission to like play my game. There is not a right or wrong way to do any business, right? I mean, there's certain aspects that we want to duplicate, right? Let's say the accounting process inside of a business. I don't really, it's not innovative. So I'm not going to like, I'm just going to do it how it works. But in terms of designing your life around your strengths, playing your game to get financial certainty, however you define success, I mean, I couldn't recommend that book more. It's made the biggest impact on me in my entire life. Highly recommend you check it out if you haven't heard it already.
I'll personally go check it out. I'll probably buy it right here after we get off here. All right, Paul. So, I mean, before we, get off this podcast, let me ask you this. Where can we find you, bug you, DM you on social media?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram now. Like I said, I never posted anything on Instagram prior to about June of 2022. So personal branding, if you're listening to this, is probably one of the fastest ways to grow your relationship capital, to grab attention in this market. If you're not on social media and you're a business owner, I personally feel like you're leaving a lot of opportunity on the table, but of course, play your game. So you can find me on Instagram, Paul Sparks Official. That's pretty much where I hang out.
Awesome, Paul. Well, thank you so much for hopping on here and sharing this incredible value. And we'll see you next time here on the Real Estate Block podcast.
Thanks so much.